Welcome. I'm Catherine Hadro, and this is EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. America takes a collective breath as a nail-biter of a presidential election nears a resolution. What does the outcome mean for the immediate future of the pro-life movement? Voters decide high-profile pro-life ballot measures in 2 states. The results, 1 win and 1 loss. We discuss the impact. And the miracle of life that brought this little boy into the world is celebrated at the beatification of Father Michael McGivney. We talk to his family coming up.
The citizens of this country have come out in record numbers. This is a record. There's never been anything like it to support our incredible movement.
I'm very proud of our campaign. Only 3 presidential campaigns in the past have defeated an incumbent president. When it's finished, God willing, we'll be the 4th.
The epic presidential election battle between President Donald Trump and challenger Joe Biden is down to the final vote counting and then very possibly the lawyers. Much hangs on the balance as just fractions of total votes remain to be tallied and resulting court challenges are planned. As we tape this program, Joe Biden has the edge in the Electoral College tabulation.
It's been a long and difficult campaign, but it's been a more difficult time for our country, a hard time. We've had hard campaigns before. We've faced hard times before. So once this election is finalized and behind us, it'll be time for us to do what we've always done as Americans, to put the harsh rhetoric of the campaign behind us, to unite, to heal, to come together as a nation.
Besides the crucial presidential election, voters decided critically important Senate, House, and local races, including pro-life initiatives on the ballot in 2 states. In Louisiana, voters passed Amendment 1, which establishes no constitutional right to abortion. But in Colorado, it was a loss for the pro-life movement as Proposition 115 failed to advance. The proposition would have banned late-term abortions at 22 weeks of pregnancy. Colorado has no restrictions on abortion. For complete pro-life analysis, we're joined by our expert panel. Mallory Quigley is Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony List, and Ramesh Ponnuru is Senior Editor of National Review. He joins us on Skype. Thanks you both for being here. Mallory, it appears pro-lifers will maintain a majority in the Senate. How much do you think the recent Amy Coney Barrett Senate hearings played a role in this?
Thanks, Catherine. Yes, this is a key point. Every senator who was up for re-election this year that was in prime time during the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation, Leader McConnell, Chairman Lindsey Graham, Senators Joni Ernst and Tom Tillis, they all were in tight re-election battles and they all won. I think that this is an indicator that this was the right strategy to push through this confirmation before the election. It gave a great surge of enthusiasm to pro-life voters in these battleground states, and it was a big bolster for these pro-life senators. And it's important that we maintain a pro-life majority in the U.S. Senate, especially if the White House is lost. We've got to have a pro-life body that can be pushing back and holding Nancy Pelosi, her pro-abortion agenda at bay.
Ramesh, if Biden were to be president, what role do you see Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell having? I know you refer to him in your recent op-ed as Biden's presidential chaperone. And would this rule out the threat of court packing?
Well, I do think that court packing is dead for the foreseeable future, even if everything goes as well as it could possibly go for Democrats. They win both of the Georgia special elections that are going to take place in January. They're going to have a razor-thin majority. They're probably not even going to have that. And so I don't think they can get court packing through. I think you've got a 6-3 Supreme Court with Republican appointees in the majority for the time being. That gives Mitch McConnell a great deal of power, and it doesn't just rule out court packing. It also means that the Democrats can't get rid of the Hyde Amendment and get much more widespread taxpayer funding of abortion. That's something that Nancy Pelosi says she wants to do. That's something that Joe Biden says he wants to do. As long as Mitch McConnell's Senate Majority Leader, it's very hard to see how that happens.
That's a huge reassurance to pro-lifers. Mallory, Representative Colin Peterson of Minnesota had a reputation as a pro-life Democrat. He was supported by Democrats for Life. He lost his re-election effort. Why did your group campaign against him?
Yes, Congressman Peterson, he has had a pro-life record in the past. Unfortunately, in recent years, he's gone downhill. He received a C on our scorecard for this most recent Congress. And Marie Fischbach, she's a pro-life woman. She's been a champion of pro-life legislation in her home state. And this is the kind of woman that Susan B. Anthony List exists to support. So we were happy to see her elected alongside a wave of pro-life women in the House.
Mallory, to that point, it is still a pro-abortion majority in the House of Representatives, but I understand the number of pro-life women in the House doubled. What does this signal to you?
Yes, as of this conversation, it's more than doubled. The number of pro-life women in the House, we're looking at 25 and more. There's, I think, 6 or 7 races still to be called in Western states. I think this is a repudiation of Speaker Pelosi's radical pro-abortion agenda and a recognition that women are not a monolith on the issue of abortion. In fact, there are many pro-life women, as viewers know, that are out there across this country. And so it's really encouraging to see pro-lifers creep back and cut the lead that Speaker Pelosi and pro-abortion Democrats have in the House.
Ramesh, I read analysis that Trump so far is on course to get the highest share of non-white voters for a Republican presidential candidate since Nixon. Do you suspect that could be pegged to the life issue? Was that a motivating factor?
So we all have to be careful, as I think we've all really seen the last few days, about relying too much on polling. But yes, it does appear that President Trump has made inroads among African Americans, among Hispanic Americans, among Asian Americans. And I do think that a large part of this was the pro-life stance. You know, for a long, long time, the conventional wisdom was that this issue of opposition to abortion was an anchor around Republicans. And it turns out that it has attracted a lot more people to the Republican Party than it has pushed out.
Mallory, what's your reaction to those 2 abortion-related ballot initiatives, the one in Louisiana and in Colorado? And what do you view as other pro-life successes so far this election week?
Yeah. Well, in pro-life successes, I mean, someone like Maria Salazar in the Miami-Dade area, Ramesh was spot on in that this is a unifying issue for Republicans and for bringing in Hispanics and other minorities into the pro-life movement. As far as the ballot initiatives go, very disappointing to see what happened in Colorado. Ballot initiatives are really tough to push through, and I think our allies in Louisiana Right to Life, they're highly organized. They just came through the June Medical Services Supreme Court battle, so I think there was maybe more momentum there that led them to get that through. Colorado is an increasingly pro-abortion state, unfortunately, as pro-abortion people move from California into places like Colorado and Texas and Montana. So very disappointing. But this is why we want federal legislation, Catherine, that would stop late-term abortion.
Ramesh, the last time that you were on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, you said Kamala Harris combines strong support for abortion with a kind of intolerant authoritarianism. If Harris is our vice president, how concerned should pro-lifers be?
Oh, I think very concerned. I think that there are a number of executive actions that a pro-abortion president can take and would take that would increase government funding for pro-abortion organizations, for example. I think you'd see the limited restrictions that we got on Planned Parenthood funding under President Trump overturned. And I think that Kamala Harris would be at the forefront of this, pushing and pushing and pushing for more pro-abortion policy. But I also want to say that one of the results of this election, if that comes to pass, if the Democrats turn out to have won the White House, we'll be in striking distance of having a pro-life majority in the House. And 2022 might be the time when we get that pro-life majority.
Wow. Ramesh, can you speak more to that? I mean, if Biden were to take the White House, but pro-lifers maintain a majority in the Senate, how much of a consolation is the Senate? I mean, how concerned should we be in the pro-life movement right now?
Well, look, as pro-lifers, we have a huge task ahead of us. We've made gains in some places. We've suffered losses in other places. We are going to continue to have a fight on our hands. But I do think that we have made serious progress at the Supreme Court. If we get a congressional majority, look, we're already in the position I think we can keep pro-abortion moves from going through Congress. We're not in the position where we can get pro-life moves through Congress, but we can work and we can get to that position.
Mallory, I know throughout this campaign you've been traveling the country. I know the Susan B. Anthony list knocked on millions of doors. Do I have that right? Can you just share some insight about what you learned on the ground with Americans today?
Yeah, we learned that pro-life is a winning issue. I mean, this unifies pro-life candidates. The Republican Party it's a new, it's very encouraging just to see this dozens of pro-life women that have just been elected to the House. This is the future. You know, there's more and more younger pro-life voices, increasingly diverse, stepping up in politics and also in campaigning. I mean, our field team was spread across 8 battleground states, and it's very young, very diverse, very passionate pro-life men, women, people of all ages. So it's really encouraging to see people get involved in the political realm. This is the tool that the founders gave us, you know, to change law, to ensure that every life is welcomed and protected under it. And I have really high hopes, even though we don't know the outcome fully of Tuesday's election. You know, there is a lot of reasons for hope.
Yes, and I know we'll be talking about this for weeks to come, but so grateful for the analysis that we have right now with the information that we know right now. Mallory Quigley, the Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony list, and Ramesh Ponnuru with National Review. Thank you both.
Thanks, Catherine.
You're welcome.
What a historic election week it's been, and it's not over yet. So far, we have seen numbers for pro-life women in the House of Representatives double. We've seen pro-lifers hold the majority in the Senate and a significant pro-life amendment passed in the state of Louisiana, but election results continue to pour in across the U.S., and with that, we turn to this week's call to action. Go to prolifeweekly.com and sign our pledge to pray for our nation. At our website, you can sign our special petition for peace and for continued victories for the pro-life movement. Emotions are running high right now, but our Lord is King, and Jesus is the Prince of Peace. We know as Catholics that prayer can make a difference. So as important election results continue to be counted and tracked, let us pray that the results are victories for the pro-life movement. And let us pray that citizens and cities across America maintain peace. Sign our pledge to pray for our nation by going to prolifeweekly.com. Louisiana's Amendment 1, which establishes no constitutional right to abortion in the state, is seen as a top pro-life success this week. It's known as the Love Life Amendment, and it updates Louisiana's constitution to state, quote, "Nothing in this constitution shall be construed to secure or protect a right to abortion or require the funding of abortion." Amendment 1 passed with a strong majority with 62% support. In the state, Liz Murrill is the Solicitor General of Louisiana. Benjamin Clapper is Executive Director of Louisiana Right to Life. They both join us now on Skype. Congratulations on Amendment 1 passing. Ben, can you first explain what Amendment 1 does exactly? It does not mean all abortions are banned in the state, correct?
Yeah, Catherine, thanks for having us on. You're right. Amendment 1, the Love Life Amendment, doesn't mean that all unborn babies are protected by law from abortion right now, though we certainly hope it helps to pave the way to that down the road. At the basic core of Amendment 1, it makes sure that a judge cannot establish or find a right to abortion in the state's constitution. This has happened in 13 other states as recently as Kansas in 2019. So basically, the state court of Kansas struck down a pro-life law because they found a right to abortion in the state's constitution, even though the word abortion can't be found in the Kansas Constitution. We did not want that to happen in Louisiana, so we set out to pass this amendment, and the people of Louisiana overwhelmingly passed the Love Life Amendment on Tuesday.
That's right. Liz, will Amendment 1 really only come into play if Roe versus Wade were to be overturned? Can you explain how this is different than the trigger law already in place in your state?
Well, yes, Catherine. I mean, I think primarily it comes into play if Roe versus Wade is overturned and the authority to regulate abortion is returned more to the states and taken more out of the hands of the federal judiciary. So that's what the amendment was intended to address, was the situation where we may have more authority returned to our own legislatures and our own states to regulate on this issue. And it would prevent the Louisiana Supreme Court. We have 7 members on our Supreme Court, but it would prevent basically a judge from finding a right to abortion, or as the case may be, 4 or any number of justices on our Supreme Court from finding a constitutional right to abortion in our state constitution.
Liz, can you clarify, do you expect Amendment 1 will face a court challenge? How does that work?
You know, they could try. I don't see why there's any basis to challenge it at this point. It doesn't prohibit anything that's not already. I mean, we're already regulated by Roe versus Wade and by the federal judicial system. I mean, the federal cases on this. So I don't see any basis on which to challenge the amendment. That doesn't mean that we won't be challenged.
Ben, Louisiana really continues to be a leader in the pro-life movement. Your state passed this pro-life amendment. Louisiana is home to a number of pro-life Democrats, including State Senator Katrina Jackson, who authored this amendment, and Governor John Bel Edwards. Ben, what can other states do to follow Louisiana's lead in creating a culture of life?
Yeah, well, we have so great to have pro-life Republicans and Democrats, and we do have everyone focuses on our pro-life Democrats. We do have a bunch of great pro-life Republicans, but I think it starts at the grassroots level. We have to educate and build a pro-life culture in our community, starting with our young people, and that will help build up and raise a pro-life generation. Then I think it's important that we engage even with communities and Democrat groups that especially may not be in urban centers, and work with them and make sure that pastors and political leaders see the value of life. And we try to separate this from the Republican-Democrat divide. That's what we've been able to do in Louisiana, and we've seen Democratic politicians follow along. And maybe they know in their heart that being pro-life is important, but politically it's been difficult for them. And so we have to come behind and support them and encourage them to be a voice for life, even though their national party doesn't follow suit.
Liz, one talking point I hear from abortion advocates is that if abortion is illegal, it will lead to women who have naturally occurring miscarriages to be criminalized. What's your response to that?
Well, I think it's just wrong, and I think that it's trying to distract from the real core of what the amendment does. It's trying to make people fear something that's not really at issue. So it's just wrong.
Ben, each state really has its own culture. There was a pro-life ballot initiative in Colorado this week that would have banned late-term abortions. It did not pass. What other states do you think have the potential to create a Republican-Democrat alliance on life like Louisiana has been able to do?
Well, I think a lot of those states who find themselves with a strong pro-life majority need to try to develop and cultivate that relationship. And, you know, Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry really went into Colorado and spent a lot of money and outspent the pro-life groups there. You know, when you're going into a ballot initiative like this, you know, we have to be prepared to fight, and we have to have the resources we need to be able to pass an amendment like this. I believe if it wasn't for our grassroots and our ability to fundraise and put messages on TV and radio across the state, our results could have been different. The pro-life movement has got to be serious in that it's not just about hoping that we win, but we have to fight and make sure that we win.
Liz, can you speak to Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry and the role he plays in advancing the pro-life issue in your state?
Well, General Landry has been a great advocate for life. He's been very supportive of all the pro-life laws that our legislature has passed. And, you know, we are prepared to defend those laws when the legislature passes them. What we say is that it is a long-term commitment, that you can't just pass the laws, you have to be willing to defend those laws. And so we've been willing to do that, and we are going to continue fighting for life and fighting for the pro-life laws that our legislature passes.
You certainly defend your laws. You've defended them in the Supreme Court. Ben, as of this recording time, Thursday afternoon, November 5th, this presidential race is still a nail-biter. Ben, as a pro-life leader, what is your message to the elected president?
Well, our message to the elected president is that, you know, really, whether you're Republican and Democrat, we need to come together to protect every American citizen, and that includes the children that are born. And if it is President Biden that happens to be the president, you know, I feel like we should be able to come together as Americans on not having taxpayer funding of abortion in this nation. My concern, as President or Vice President Biden has said, is that he would approve destroying the Hyde Amendment. And that's a bad direction for our country, where Americans are forced to pay for abortions with their tax dollars. My message is, let's find some common ground moving forward into the next few years to make sure the taxpayer funding of abortion is not a reality.
Absolutely. Liz, I have to ask, what's your reaction to the recent news that Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court? You argued at the Supreme Court earlier this year defending a pro-life law in Louisiana. The court ruled against you, but things have gone differently with Justice Barrett.
Certainly they might have. There's no way to know. But, you know, I think that we have seen some good results, even though we lost the defense of our law, we still gained some ground, I think, with the June medical opinion. And we're seeing that play out now in courts of appeal and federal courts of appeal. And we have an issue now where the U.S. Fifth Circuit just this week vacated a panel opinion and has decided to go en banc and hear a case out of Texas on their dismemberment ban to decide essentially whether the chief's opinion in June medical is the controlling opinion, and to align itself with the Eighth Circuit and the Sixth Circuit. So we are seeing some fruits from June medical. It was disappointing to lose the case, but at the same time, I think we now view that loss as a win.
Well, thank you both for your pro-life leadership and for being here today. Liz Murrill, Louisiana Solicitor General; Ben Clapper, Exec Director of Louisiana Right to Life. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks, Catherine.
The issue of life wasn't preeminent only in the U.S. election. I'll speak out about a controversial euthanasia ballot measure elsewhere coming up. And celebrating the beatification of a man who gave so much to the world, Father Michael McGivney, the founder of the Knights of Columbus, will tell you about a little boy named in his honor and the miracle of his life. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. Important elections are happening outside the U.S. as well. Just last week, New Zealand voted to legalize euthanasia. That is this week's Speak Out segment. New Zealanders endorsed a euthanasia measure with an estimated 65% majority. The measure allows euthanasia for adults who have a terminal illness, are likely to die within 6 months, and are enduring, quote, unbearable suffering. Here's how one New Zealand politician reacted to the news.
Look, I'm just feeling fantastic. It gives me so much love for this country that we have chosen to give those people suffering some real choice and control and compassion at the end of their life. I think to have not done so would have been frankly barbaric, but now New Zealanders will have that choice, and I think it's a great day to be a New Zealander.
Euthanasia is the deliberate killing of someone by action or omission. This New Zealand measure will be enacted next November. Euthanasia advocates often use the word compassion to defend their views, but compassion means to suffer with, and euthanasia snuffs out. Catholic ethicists warn euthanasia puts vulnerable people on a dangerous path because the mere option of euthanasia sends a signal that if you're suffering, your life is a burden, and it puts pressure on the medically ill to end their life through euthanasia. Suffering in life is inevitable. It does not mean it's your time to die. In fact, suffering means you're at the crux of what it means to live. It is a part of the mysterious human experience. Even if you are at your weakest, your life matters and has an impact on people. Never doubt that. We as Christians have a sober grasp of suffering as we adorn our Christ nailed to a cross. It's a perplexing message to our world, but it is our duty as believers to witness that truth. Let us evangelize that compassion does not mean to kill. It means to share the burden and walk with our most vulnerable. This past weekend's beatification of Father Michael McGivney, his impact on the world today, and a miracle that emphasizes the preeminence of life is the subject of this week's Pro-Life Focus. The 19th century cleric, a parish priest in Connecticut, is now one step closer to receiving the title of saint. Father McGivney is credited with changing the church around the globe through the founding of the Knights of Columbus and its charitable work for the vulnerable and poor. His journey to beatification highlighted by the miracle of life for 5-year-old Mikey. The Tennessee boy was healed from a fatal condition inside his mother's womb when his family prayed for the intercession of Father McGivney. Mark Irons of EWTN News Nightly was at the beatification and caught up with the family, forever grateful for the newest blessed.
My family's been praying for the beatification of Father McGivney since I can remember. And for Mikey to be a miracle, it's just very touching to me. And I just know that it's God's plan unveiling itself, and it's going to reach a lot of people. And he really is a miracle to all of us.
Mikey is the youngest of 13 children. Because of the family's devotion to Father Michael McGivney, Mikey is named after him. One more verified miracle is needed for Father McGivney's road to sainthood. For now, we celebrate the gift of life for little Mikey Skakul. On a more somber note, the day after McGivney's beatification on All Saints' Day, our president and chief operating officer here at EWTN News, Andrew Walther, died. Walther took on his role at EWTN News in June and shortly after was diagnosed with leukemia. Prior to working here, Walther worked at the Knights of Columbus for 15 years. Long devoted to Blessed McGivney's cause, Walther died one day after his beatification and venerated the Blessed's relic shortly before dying. Andrew Walther will be remembered as a loving husband, father, for serving the Catholic Church and defending religious minorities throughout the world. Eternal rest grant unto Andrew, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon him. That does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Until next time, we'd love to hear from you. Find us on social media at EWTN Pro-Life on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we're there. You can also send us a message by emailing prolifeweekly@ewtn.com. We love to hear from you. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.